What would you do if you came home for Christmas and found your grandfather trembling alone in the kitchen, clutching a dry sandwich while a note on the fridge informed you your life savings were gone? That was the moment everything shifted. My name's Hazel Mitchell. I'm 28 years old, and 3 days before Christmas, I walked into the house I grew up in, only to feel it crumble around me. I'd just gotten off a red-eye flight from Portland to suburban Connecticut, hoping for a quiet reunion. I hadn't been home in nearly a year. Life as a pediatric nurse was exhausting but fulfilling. I'd finally landed a leadership offer at Portland Children's Hospital, my dream job. I didn't expect confetti and champagne, but I definitely didn't expect this. The house was dark when I stepped inside. No twinkling lights, no tree, not even the smell of cookies or cinnamon. Just silence. Until I heard the soft clink of a spoon in a mug. In the kitchen, the dim under-cabinet light revealed Grandpa Ernest, my rock, through every storm sitting alone at the table, trying to butter a slice of white bread. His hands shook so badly the butter kept sliding off. And on the fridge, a note, taped hastily scribbled in my mother's handwriting. Used your money for Connor. Watch him this week. We're enjoying Cancun. Mom and Dad, no apology, no warning, just theft, and instructions. I froze. It was like my body couldn't process what I was reading. My savings, gone. $23,000 I'd built over 4 years, working double shifts, skipping vacations, living on ramen. That money was supposed to go toward my student loans in February. I trusted them. I'd trusted my mother when she insisted on managing my future fund to keep it safe. Grandpa looked up and saw the color drain from my face. His hand, once firm from a lifetime of engineering, touched mine brittle and cold. "They'll regret this, sweetheart," he said gently. I didn't reply. I just crumpled the note and slid down the refrigerator, the cold linoleum floor catching me as I collapsed. 3 days later, they would regret it. But before we get to that, I need to take you back to when the cracks first appeared. Because betrayal like this, it doesn't just happen overnight. It's layered, years in the making. I learned how to be responsible by necessity. At 16, when Dad lost his job and Mom's retail gig barely kept the lights on, I stepped up. While other girls were picking out prom dresses, I was picking up shifts 5 p.m. to midnight at Morgan's Grocery, then delivering newspapers before school. Not because anyone made me. I just saw our ship sinking and grabbed a bucket. Connor was 11 then. Too young to work, too coddled to worry. Connor's sensitive mom always said, he needs normalcy. So while I clipped coupons and counted quarters, he kept his baseball league, got new games every birthday, and never once got told no. Back then, I didn't resent it. He was just a kid, but patterns. They're dangerous when repeated without question. By 19, I'd scrimped and saved enough for community college. I worked as a hospital orderly and transferred $800 each month into an account Mom called my future fund. She warned me about banks preying on young adults. Let us manage it. We'll keep it safe. I believed her. Over 4 years, that fund grew to $23,000, money earmarked for my student loans, my clean slate. But while I was building a future, Connor was unraveling. At 14, teachers called home about missing assignments. At 16, he was caught with marijuana. By 18, he'd already transferred through 3 high schools, each exit marked by misunderstandings my parents explained away. Last Christmas, he didn't even show up for breakfast, rolled downstairs near dinner with bloodshot eyes. Mom piled his plate first. "He's just finding himself," she said. Meanwhile, Grandpa Ernest's health was failing. Early Parkinson's, tremors, memory lapses. I begged my parents to help him install safety bars, but Mom just brushed it off. "Did I tell you Connor might try community college next fall?" she'd say, always changing the subject, always redirecting concern back to Connor. Even though Grandpa lived just 15 minutes away, they rarely visited. Grandpa wasn't just a grandparent to me. He was home. While my parents hosted poker nights and wine socials, Grandpa taught me to change oil, fix a faucet, and advocate for myself. Backbone before wishbone, he'd mutter helping with math homework. His modest ranch house became my sanctuary. So when I came home and saw him frail, forgotten, fighting to spread butter on old bread, my rage boiled, especially knowing he hadn't eaten a hot meal in days. "I've been eating sandwiches since Tuesday," he admitted. "Can't use the stove anymore." My hands. His fingers shook violently as he tried to lift them. I didn't want to bother anyone. Tears blurred my vision. This wasn't just financial betrayal. It was neglect. Then came the next blow. "Where's Connor?" I asked, remembering the note. Grandpa sighed. "He stopped by yesterday, borrowed $20 in your car, said he'd be back in a few hours. That was 30 hours ago." I checked my phone. No messages. I tried calling my parents. Voicemail. "We're making memories in Cancun. Leave a message. No emergency contact. No way to reach them." I walked into Connor's room, and what I found there made my stomach drop. A brand new gaming system, designer clothes with tags still attached, torn prescription labels, razor blades, a digital scale, beer cans. He wasn't just gone. He was spiraling, and I was the one left to catch him. The doorbell rang. It was Brenda Nelson from next door, her gray bob frizzed with worry. "Thank God you're here, Hazel," she whispered. "Your grandfather, he's been alone. And Connor. There were 15 cars here last night, music shaking the windows. I called your parents, but—" She shook her head. "Boys need to blow off steam," they told me. What they needed was a reckoning, because that night, as Grandpa and I ate peanut butter sandwiches and lukewarm water, the only things left in the house, I made a silent vow. They won't get away with this. And trust me, they didn't. You'd think I'd scream, or cry, or call the cops. But in that moment, I did none of those things. Instead, I made a peanut butter sandwich for Grandpa. We sat at that cluttered kitchen table, the dim bulb above us flickering like a warning sign, and I watched the man who raised me struggle to hold his sandwich steady. His knuckles shook. His expression stayed gentle, but his eyes, they were hollow. "How will you manage your loans now?" he asked after a long silence. I didn't have an answer, just stared down at my half-eaten sandwich and whispered, "I don't know." Because that $23,000 wasn't just money, it was my freedom, my plan, my next chapter. And now it was a memory. "Deferment ends in February," I added numbly. Grandpa nodded slowly, like a man adding up the cost of every missed call, every ignored symptom. "And Connor," he said softly, "what state will he be in when we find him?" I didn't reply. Just looked around the kitchen again now through the lens of critical awareness. Sink full of dishes, expired mail piled high, fridge nearly empty aside from processed cheese slices and a shriveled lemon. This house wasn't just neglected, it had been abandoned, even if bodies still passed through it. I started calling around. First my parents again, still voicemail, then Connor's old friends, nothing. And then finally, I called Audrey. Audrey had been my best friend since nursing school, sharp, loyal, and terrifying when needed. "Hazel," she said, listening to my tear-choked recounting, "you need to check your credit report immediately." What? No. This is about the savings. No, babe. If they had access to that, they might have helped themselves to everything. The credit check revealed no new accounts, no new lines of debt. But when I called the bank to verify recent transactions on my savings, the truth finally surfaced. Systematic withdrawals had been made for 6 months, little by little, until 3 days ago when the final transfer wiped it clean. Each withdrawal had been made by Diana Mitchell, my mother. She had kept joint access since I was a teenager. I never removed her because I trusted her, because she said, "It's safer this way. We'll manage it together." But she hadn't managed. She'd stolen. Grandpa sat quietly as I relayed the news, nodding in grim understanding. "They've done it to me too," he murmured after a beat. I blinked. What last year? Said they needed help with the kitchen remodel, promised to pay it back in installments, never saw a dime. He handed me a crumpled bank statement showing a $30,000 withdrawal, nearly half my retirement savings. I felt sick. Did they pay any of it back? Grandpa didn't need to answer. The silence was confirmation enough. My mind spiraled. This wasn't just a one-time betrayal. It was a pattern, a lifestyle. My parents had depleted their own funds keeping Connor afloat, and when that well ran dry, they came for ours. And Connor, he'd been raised inside that system immune from consequences, always protected. But protected isn't the same as loved. Protected in our family meant enabled. Remember when he crashed Dad's car at 16, I asked, voice cold. They took your college fund to replace it, Grandpa recalled. Said he was too fragile to handle the guilt. I nodded slowly. Or when they borrowed my graduation money to pay for that wilderness therapy program. The one he left after 2 days, Grandpa's eyes darkened. Because your mother couldn't handle him being upset with her. And then it clicked. All of it. The coddling, the avoidance, the excuses. It wasn't compassion, it was control. She was the same with Uncle James, wasn't she, I asked. He flinched at the name. Yes. Gave him everything. Solved every problem. Until... He trailed off. But I knew the ending. James died of an overdose at 23. He was the cautionary tale, the one they whispered about, the one my mother swore she'd never repeat. And yet, here we were. Different son. Same story. I enabled her grandpa admitted voice thick with guilt. After her mother died. I gave Diana everything. Never said no. He wiped his eyes with a trembling hand. And now I've watched her destroy 2 generations. I leaned forward, resting my hand on his. Then let's stop it. We spent the next hour compiling a forensic map of our family's financial disaster. Beyond my savings and Grandpa's loan, we discovered 2 home refinances on their property. Maxed out credit cards. Payday loans with 36% interest rates. And Connor's closet overflowing with designer brands he didn't earn. When the landline rang, I jumped. It was Mrs. Patel, Connor's high school counselor. Connor's missed 3 weekly check-ins, she said. It's a condition of his diploma equivalency program. This is his 3rd strike. I assured her I'd follow up. But when I turned to tell Grandpa, he was staring at another statement, one I hadn't seen before. They drained more than I thought, he said quietly, pushing the paper toward me. This one showed a secondary account tapped regularly. Payments labeled Connor's rent, Connor's tuition, Connor's therapy, a total of $18,000. All promised to be repaid, Grandpa said. But there was always another emergency, another need, another excuse. My heart hardened into something colder, more focused. This wasn't about one lost fund. This was about a systematic pattern of exploitation wrapped in the language of family obligation. No more. The doorbell rang again. It was Nathan West, Connor's friend since middle school, fidgeting on the porch. Hey, Mrs. Mitchell asked me to come feed the fish. We don't have fish, I said flatly. He blinked. Right. Just helping out. Then I saw it. His eyes darting, the fidgeting, the evasiveness. Nathan, I said sharply, you're not here to feed fish. You're here to collect. He looked panicked. Connor owes me $800. Your parents said they'd leave it. My stomach turned. They hadn't just used my savings for a vacation. They'd used it to pay Connor's drug debts. I stepped out and closed the door behind me. If you ever show up here again, I'm calling the police. You understand? He fled, muttering excuses. When I turned back inside, Grandpa sat slumped at the table, staring at nothing. I helped create this, he whispered, but we can end it, and I believed him. That night, as the house settled into heavy silence, I opened a new document on my laptop. I titled it Operation Take Back Control, and it started with 3 words, power of attorney. When you realize the people you trusted most see you as a convenience, not a daughter, it changes something deep inside. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of anger, though I had every right to be furious. No, what kept me awake was something colder, focused, sharp. I was done reacting. It was time to act. By morning, I drafted a power of attorney agreement, emailed Rachel, my former roommate, and now a corporate attorney in New Haven, and started documenting everything. Screenshots of my savings withdrawals, photos of Grandpa's bare fridge, voice memos of our conversations. We weren't just victims of a bad decision, we were targets in a long con. And I was done playing along. Let's start by finding Connor, I told Grandpa over instant oatmeal and burnt coffee. He nodded. But if he's not ready to be found, we'll need a backup plan. I scanned Connor's social media Instagram posts, geotagged from the old Simmons house by Lakeview Drive, a known party spot. His latest post, a selfie with red eyes and a vacant grin flashing a $2,000 watch I recognized from Mom's online wish list. That watch was mine. Literally. My savings paid for it. We made a list of his usual haunts, the skate park, Riverside Mall, the old train depot. After grabbing Grandpa's overdue medications from the pharmacy and stocking the kitchen with real food, we started our search. The skate park was empty, just torn cans and the smell of smoke. The mall food court gave us a lead. A security guard recognized Connor but said he hadn't been around in days. Finally, at Coffee Junction, we found Kyle Connor's childhood friend, who somehow hadn't fallen off the deep end. He's staying with Maxwell Thompson. Kyle muttered, looking over his shoulder. Max's parents are out of the country. Their place is Party Central. I knew that house. Big white colonial. Manicured lawn. Security system always broken. Perfect place to disappear if you didn't want responsibility to find you. We pulled into the circular driveway just after noon. A luxury car idled out front. The recycling bin overflowed with empty bottles. The front door unlocked. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of pot and cheap cologne. Fast food wrappers and vape cartridges littered the floor. Someone groaned from behind a closed door. A blonde girl stumbled past us without saying a word. Connor. I called, my nurse's voice cutting through the haze. Nothing. Then we found him, slumped over a toilet in the upstairs guest bathroom, pale and sweating. Hazel. He blinked, unfocused. What are you taking you home? Maxwell sat on the edge of the tub, barely conscious. He's fine, he slurred, but he wasn't. His pupils were blown, his speech slurred. He was barely holding himself upright. Bottles of unprescribed pills lined the counter. Oxy, Xanax, Adderall. None of them in Connor's name. I switched into nurse mode. Connor, stand up. You're coming with me. Now? No, I'm okay, he mumbled. But his legs buckled as Grandpa and I helped him down the stairs. He didn't resist. Couldn't really. The ride home was silent, except for the occasional groan from the back seat. His skin had that pallid, clammy tone I'd seen too many times in ER rotations. At home, I gave him ibuprofen toast and water. He curled up on the couch like a resentful child. When he could sit upright, we finally had the conversation I'd been rehearsing in my head for years. Where's Grandpa's car, I asked. Connor blinked. At Max's, maybe, or by the park. And his medications. He winced. I forgot. I slid the savings statement across the table. Do you know what this is? He glanced at it, shrugged. Mom said you'd be okay with it, that they'd pay you back. They said the same thing about my graduation money, my college fund, my emergency savings. Remember those? He didn't answer. You don't understand, he muttered. I had debts. People were threatening me. Because of your choices, I replied coldly, and because Mom and Dad shielded you from every consequence. His face reddened. Not everyone wants to be you, Hazel. Not everyone wants some boring nurse life. I want to not be addicted to drugs, I snapped. I want to not steal from people I love. That's not boring. That's survival. Grandpa's voice cut through the tension, low but firm. When's the last time you went 24 hours without something in your system, Connor? My brother stared at the floor. His silence was the answer. You're killing yourself, Grandpa said, not cruelly, just honestly. And if we don't stop you, you'll end up like James. Connor flinched. I'm not like him. Then prove it, I said. Let us help you. But instead of accepting the hand we offered, he stood abruptly. His chair scraped across the floor. I'm not doing this intervention crap, he muttered. You're not my mom. No, I said. But if I were, I would have gotten you real help a long time ago." He stormed out the back door, slamming it behind him. Through the window, I watched him pace the backyard, gesturing wildly at nothing. Grandpa shook his head. Diana was the same at his age, he said. Couldn't hear anything that contradicted her version of reality. "Will he run?" I asked. Grandpa looked out the window thoughtfully. "Maybe. But he's got nowhere to go. No car, no money. Max's parents come home tomorrow." Sure enough, 20 minutes later, Connor crept back inside. He grabbed a string cheese from the fridge, slumped into a kitchen chair, and avoided eye contact. "So what now?" he mumbled. "We start setting boundaries," I said. "And this time, they're not suggestions. 2 days. That's how long the fragile peace lasted." Connor stayed mostly curled up on the couch, watching old sitcoms with dead eyes shivering as his body began to withdraw. Grandpa and I hovered, feeding him toast, keeping him hydrated, making sure he didn't slip something into his system behind our backs. I started sleeping with my phone on loud. I didn't trust a single thing anymore, not from Connor, and definitely not from the people who were supposed to be our parents. Then came the night it all cracked open. It was around 2:30 a.m. when I woke to the sound of vomiting. Not just regular vomiting, violent retching sounds coming from the hallway bathroom. I rushed in. Connor was slumped over the toilet, pale sweating through his shirt, gasping. "Did you take something?" I demanded, grabbing his wrist to check his pulse. He didn't answer. His pupils were tiny. His breathing was shallow. There was an orange pill bottle in the sink. Grandpa's heart medication. It was nearly empty. I didn't wait. I called 911, shoved Connor into the car, and drove straight to the hospital while staying on the line with the dispatcher. My hands shook as I pulled up to the ER entrance, shouting for help. They wheeled him in his limbs, limp, his face gray. As they worked on him, inserting IVs and pushing activated charcoal, a young nurse tapped my shoulder gently. "Are you family?" I nodded. "Sister." She handed me a clipboard. "We need you to fill this out. Insurance emergency contact." I froze. Emergency contact? For the kid who nearly killed himself with our grandfather's medication. How do you summarize that in a form field? I filled it in anyway. "Next of kin," she asked. "Not our parents," I said firmly. "Put me." While Connor lay unconscious, they ran talk screens and stabilized him in the ICU. He had taken 9 pills, not enough to stop his heart completely, but enough to want to. And enough to show me the truth. He wasn't just irresponsible. He was drowning. I stepped outside to breathe and call our parents. They didn't answer. It was 4:20 a.m. Connecticut time. I called again. Finally, a groggy voice picked up. "Diana." "Hazel," she slurred. "It's the middle of the night. Connor's in the ICU. He overdosed on Grandpa's pills." Silence. Then, What happened?" I repeated it. Slowly, deliberately. "You need to come home." A pause. "Can't you just handle it for now? We're not scheduled to fly back for another 4 days, and Thomas booked the snorkeling tour. He could have died," I snapped. "He almost did, and you're talking about snorkeling." Her voice tightened. "Hazel, you always exaggerate." "No," I said, suddenly calm. "You've just never had to face the truth." I hung up. My phone immediately started buzzing text after text from her, then Thomas, excuses, defensive rambling, the usual. I turned it off. Inside, Connor lay still, machines beeping softly around him. In another wing of the hospital, I admitted Grandpa for evaluation. His blood pressure had spiked from the stress, and he looked more tired than I'd ever seen him. "It's not your fault," I told him. But I wasn't sure I even believed it anymore. Back home, I dug into everything. I called Rachel again. "We need to move fast," I told her. "They've been draining accounts tied to Grandpa's name. Hazel's savings are gone, and now Connor nearly overdosed. I want emergency powers of attorney, a financial freeze, and the house sold before they set foot on American soil." Rachel didn't even flinch. "Send me the documents. I'll prep the motions. You're done being nice." I nodded. I was. When the social worker assigned to Grandpa's care heard the story, she didn't hesitate. "This sounds like elder neglect," she said, "and potentially abuse. I didn't want to file anything," I admitted. "They're still my parents." She looked at me unblinking. "Until someone's in a coma. Or dead. That's when people usually say that, and by then it's too late. So I signed the paperwork, I filed the report, I drew the line. Connor survived. He woke up 18 hours later, groggy, ashamed, and eerily quiet. "I didn't mean to," he began. "I know I said, but that doesn't make it better." He cried. Not the angry, manipulative kind of crying he used to weaponize. Real tears, broken ones. "I don't want to be like this anymore." "Then prove it," I said. "You're going to a real treatment center, not a spa, not a joke. Real work." He didn't argue. By the time Diana and Thomas landed back in Connecticut, Connor was already in intake. Grandpa was in a short-term care facility 2 blocks from my apartment, and our old family home already listed for sale. And that's when the storm really hit. They walked in like they owned the world. Diana and Thomas arrived at the rehab center at exactly 10:02 a.m. Not because they wanted to see their son, but because I had left one message the night before: "Connor is stable, but you'll need to speak to the director before visiting. I've arranged it." I watched from the lobby window as they stormed across the parking lot. Diana in oversized sunglasses and a pastel linen blazer. Thomas trailing in his salmon-colored polo like he'd come straight from a yacht. As soon as they spotted me, Diana's lips curled into that familiar, exhausted smile, the kind she used whenever I disappointed her by telling the truth. "Well," she said, "this is dramatic even for you." "Hi, Mom," I said coolly. "Let's talk inside." We were led to a private counseling room. The director of admissions, a firm yet kind woman named Melissa, sat across from us with Connor's file. She opened with a simple fact: Connor was admitted on a voluntary basis. He scored high on the substance dependency scale. He's a candidate for long-term residential care, possibly 60-90 days. Thomas blinked. That's a lot. He just needs a break. Maybe a week tops." Melissa looked at me. I nodded slightly. She continued, "He's exhibiting signs of polydrug dependence and risk of relapse. Given the incident with your father's prescription medication, we're treating this seriously." Diana finally removed her sunglasses. "I think this whole thing is being blown out of proportion. He's a teenager." "He's 22, I said, "and he nearly died." Diana's eyes narrowed. "And you just decided to admit him." "Without our input, I'm his sister. I'm also his healthcare proxy, signed while you were sipping cocktails in Aruba." Her face paled slightly. "You tricked him into signing something while he was under duress." "No, he was sober and terrified, and for once honest." Thomas folded his arms. "You're not a parent, Hazel. You wouldn't understand." I leaned forward. "No, I'm a nurse, and a woman who's been financially exploited by her own parents." "I understand too much," Diana hissed. "We did what we had to do. We were drowning. Your father had 2 job offers fall through. The house was underwater. We couldn't refinance. And your solution was to steal my savings and sell Grandpa's heirlooms." Her mouth opened, then closed. Melissa spoke up gently. "This isn't the place for that conversation, but I'd advise the 2 of you to accept the help being offered here. Because if you don't, there are legal steps already underway." We left them in stunned silence. That afternoon, Rachel called. The emergency conservatorship was approved. "You have full medical and financial authority over your grandfather for 6 months renewable. Diana and Thomas have been blocked from accessing any accounts tied to his name, and the house, sold above, asking. Funds are in escrow." I felt a knot in my chest begin to loosen for the first time in years. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again. "Diana." Voicemail. "Hazel. What did you do? Do you understand what this means? You've burned bridges you can't rebuild. You think the law will protect you? We're still his children. That house was ours. You don't get to erase us. I deleted it." They weren't erased. They were just cut off. Connor's road to recovery wasn't clean. He relapsed 3 weeks later, then voluntarily recommitted himself. This time, no pushback, just quiet nods, progress in baby steps. Grandpa. He was thriving. He started walking with a cane again, read novels on the porch, Sometimes he even smiled. I moved back into my apartment and converted the spare room into his new bedroom. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Stable. Real. One day, while going through the final box from Grandpa's house, I found a letter, yellowed, postmarked 1988, from my grandmother, addressed to me. Hazel, if you're reading this, it means the house has come to you. I hope you know we always believed in you even when others didn't. Legacy isn't blood, it's choice. Choose better. I cried for a long time. Then I scanned it, framed it, hung it above the dining table, the same table where Connor would soon sit clean, fighting still funny in moments, and where Grandpa now offered quiet grace before every meal. Diana and Thomas, they tried, threatened to sue, filed a motion. But Rachel countered every step, and when the full report from the hospital came out, the one that outlined how close Connor came to dying, they backed off. No apology, just silence, which honestly was fine by me. The nonprofit started with an idea. I was standing in Grandpa's kitchen fixing him chamomile tea one evening when he looked up from the newspaper and asked Hazel, "If you could build anything, what would you build?" I stared at the kettle. And then I said it almost without thinking. A medical fund for young adults like Connor. People falling through the cracks, too old for pediatric support, too young to be taken seriously by insurance. He nodded. Good. Use the money. Make it mean something. So we did. Rachel helped me set up the 501c3. We named it the Langford Trust after Grandma's maiden name. Quiet legacy. Clean start. Within 2 months, we'd raised $47,000 in grants and private donations. My hospital board even matched some of it after I pitched the mission. Connor's story, stripped of names, became part of our founding case studies. Meanwhile, the final legal battle loomed. Diana and Thomas were filing for partial restoration of financial access to Grandpa's estate, claiming undue influence manipulation and emotional sabotage by me. Their lawyer was slick, expensive, polished in that unnerving way, all silver tongue and tailored suits. Rachel destroyed him. But the surprise wasn't her. It was Connor. He requested to speak at the hearing. He sat at the witness table, haircut short sleeves, rolled up hands, fidgeting, but sober, clear-eyed. And when the judge asked if he wanted to share anything voluntarily, he did. "My parents love me," he said quietly. "But they don't know how to protect people. They're really good at pretending everything's fine even when it's not. When I started spiraling, they didn't see it. Or maybe they didn't want to." He paused, glanced at me. But Hazel did. She saw everything. And she saved my life. "You could have heard a pin drop." He continued. "They used me. Grandpa's money, Hazel's savings, and they never apologized. They just called her dramatic, controlling. But she stepped up when everyone else left. The judge asked him plainly, "Do you believe your parents should have access to your grandfather's estate again?" Connor shook his head. "No, sir, I don't. That was it. Decision deferred for 30 days pending full review, but we knew. We'd already won." That night, Grandpa asked me something that broke me. What happens when I'm gone, I didn't dodge it. I'll protect Connor. I'll run the trust. I'll live honestly. That's all you ever wanted, right? He smiled, and it was soft, full of peace. "You're the best of us, Hazel." Not long after Connor graduated from his program, we hosted a small dinner, me, Grandpa, a couple of close friends from Rehab. Connor gave a little speech and everything. It was awkward and messy and so human. And then, as we were clearing dishes, he pulled me aside. "I opened a savings account," he said, almost bashful. "Put in some money from my part-time job. Connor..." He pulled out a folded check. 10% for the trust. It's not much, but I want in. For real. I hugged him so tight I think I cracked a rib. That night, as I sat on the porch with Grandpa sipping wine and listening to cicadas, I realized something. Legacy isn't just what you build, It's what you refuse to carry forward. We broke the cycle. We chose different. And we didn't wait for permission. We just began.